Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm doing part 2 of my Q&A, answering your questions that you guys left for me on Facebook and on the YouTube channel. And jumping right in, this first question comes from Phil. Do you plan on coming through Europe once all this COVID is resolved on your world tour? Yes, absolutely, I do plan on coming to Europe, hopefully very soon. Next question comes from Gary. He says, how do you deal with laundry? Do you go to a laundromat or wash and hang dry at camp? To answer that question, most often I'm washing my stuff as I go. Socks and underwear just washed in a sink, hung out to dry around camp. And then maybe once every 2 weeks I'll just stop at a laundromat just to get everything cleaned all at once. That's kind of how I deal with that. And the second part of his question, do you cook or fast food it? Far more often I'm cooking pasta dishes and camping meals. Once in a while, especially not necessarily fast food restaurants, but local restaurants or fast food that's local. That sometimes I opt for like say lunch or an early dinner. Next part of his question is, how much time do you devote to shooting, prepping videos? I would say each video takes anywhere from 8 to 15 hours to film, to edit, all of that, upload, anywhere from 8 to 15 hours. And the final part of his question is, why the sheepskin cover? Doesn't it get wet? It does get wet. I like the sheepskin mostly for the way that it looks. It also does add a little bit of cushion and helps with airflow. My seat cushion is a white sheepskin, and so it doesn't get as hot as like a black leather seat. So it does help, but it does get wet, and that's kind of annoying to deal with. Okay, this next one comes from crazychase. What is one piece of gear you never leave the house without? And what is your favorite cheap piece of gear? The one thing I never leave home without, I would say probably my Nanopresso from Wakeiko, the coffee maker. That goes with me even on day trips. And as far as my favorite cheap piece of gear, there's been quite a few that are pretty affordable and good quality pieces of gear. I think the number one thing I would say is my old Kelty tent. That was pretty affordable, and it was a really solid piece of gear that worked really well for me for quite a few years. And that was the TN2, which I don't think they make anymore. It's been replaced with the Dirt Motel. Next question from Tim. How about on-the-road maintenance? Anything you're checking or adjusting every so often? The number one thing I'm checking every so often would be tire pressure. My bike has a tire pressure monitor on it, but I never really trust that completely. So I do throw a gauge on there every few days while I'm on the road. Next question from Sophia. Do you work on your own bike? Like between trips, not only just roadside repairs? Yeah, almost everything that gets done to my bike I do myself. There's a couple things I'll drop it off at the dealership for, like valves, for example, because when the valves are due to be done, I just kind of feel like it's best to just get the bike in someone else's hands, a second pair of eyes, to kind of go over everything, as well as doing the valve adjustment, to have somebody else just kind of give the bike a once-over every once in a while. Next one from Rockbreaker. Do you feel like you're racing from point to point and not taking time to smell the roses? Have you ever stayed in the same primitive campsite for 2 weeks? I have not stayed in a primitive campsite for that long. The most is usually 2 nights, only because I'm limited by how much water I can carry. I do feel like my first year of traveling full time, I really did race from point A to point B pretty much the whole year, and that really took its toll on me. So now more so, I'm going much slower and enjoying it and taking the time to smell the roses, as you said. Next question from Ozan Yesel. I would like to know about riding in windy conditions with light dual sport motorcycle on highways. How can I feel safer, or is there anything to make it safer? Boy, that's a tough one. Even on my big heavy bike, sometimes I get blasted by the wind and it feels like I'm going to get blown right off the road. As far as any tips, just maybe packing some extra gear on your bike and making sure everything is aerodynamic as possible. And just lean into it. Lean in and hold on. And one thing I have found that kind of helps is throwing out a knee, just stretching your knee out just a little bit, just to kind of put some drag, like the wind would be hitting your knee and kind of pulling the bike the way that you need to go. So say you're getting blown to the right, throw your left knee out and it'll kind of pull you And that seems to help with riding in the wind for me, as well as just leaning in and trying to relax as hard as it is. Next question from Black Tiger. I'm taking my first motorcycle camping trip this summer, and would you recommend a GPS, phone, or paper maps for navigation purposes? Typically I'm using my phone for almost everything. It is nice to have a paper map if you want, a bigger picture of where you are. As far as a dedicated GPS unit, I don't really think it's necessary. My phone on my handlebar seems to work really well with Google Maps. Next question from BC. Are you not tired of this life? Don't you want to get married and have kids? To answer that question, no, I'm not tired of this life, and as much as I love my nephews, I think that's as close to having children that I want to get. Next question from Robert. He said, my question is, how are you doing? Thank you, Robert. I appreciate you reaching out and asking me that. I'm doing much better than I was a few weeks ago, and a lot better than I was a few months ago. Just keep getting better day by day. I hope you are also well. Next question from Pierre. It has probably already been asked in the past, but I wonder if you sometimes shop around for a different bike, or if you plan on just getting a new one when the current GS gets too old. I plan on putting several 100,000 miles on my bike before ever replacing it, and I don't think I would ever get rid of this bike. It just has too much sentimental value. I do think in the future, if something catastrophic happened to my bike and I had to replace it, I would probably just go with another GS. I've been so happy with that bike. Next question from Troy. He says, looking to travel offbeat areas and wondering how you use a sat phone or at all. How often you use a sat phone or at all. Seems like a sat phone and AAA would be a must. I only really use the sat phone to check in with people. Say I'm off the grid for a few days, and I'll just kind of check in just to let people know where I am, when I'm expected to be coming back to regular cell phone service. And so I'll just send messages, hey, I'm at camp, I'm off the bike for the day, everything's good and I'm safe, and that's it. And I'll send those out, once a day or every other day. As far as AAA, I'm not sure that they would even cover vehicle recovery that far off the grid. But my sat phone has recovery insurance built into it. Next question from the captain. What do you consider to be the best adventure helmet regardless of price, and why? I have been really happy with both the Shoei Hornet and the Arai XD4. Both of those have been excellent helmets for me. Next question from No Job for Life. What kind of foods do you carry with you? I would say the most common thing that I'm carrying would be camping meals. The dehydrated camping meals seem to work really well. So that's usually what I'm carrying. And that is all the questions we have for today. If you guys have any further questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to answer them in a future Q&A. Or if it's a detailed question, perhaps I'll make a whole video on it for you. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys got something out of this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.